Good morning. It is filled to the brim and it is Thursday, May 20th. What a beautiful spring day. Now, the Lord is speaking to us about increasing our faith. Actually, we are asking Him to increase our faith. It's time for that. The Lord is bringing us into a new measure of faith, just like He did of the people, His followers, in Hebrews chapter 11. Today I want to talk to you about how it takes faith to follow, and there's a cost to following Christ. There are people in Scripture that believed, and says this in the New Testament, but did not necessarily follow Him, did not necessarily become a disciple. Some because they wanted the approval of man more than the approval of God, and therefore they could not become public disciples of Jesus. And we find in Scripture that Jesus called people to follow, and it took faith to do so. Even in the original disciples, when Jesus goes to Peter and Andrew in Matthew chapter 4, it tells us that they have to do something. There is a cost for them to follow Jesus. Matthew 4:18 through 22 says, "Now as Jesus was walking by the Sea of Galilee, he saw two brothers, Simon, who is called Peter, and his brother Andrew casting a net into the sea, for they were fishermen. And he said to them, 'Follow me, and I will make you fishers of people.' Immediately," that word is significant, immediately they left their nets and followed him. Going on from there, he saw two other brothers, James the son of Zebedee and his brother John, in the boat with their father Zebedee, mending their nets. And he called them. Immediately they left the boat and their father and followed him. Now, two things. First, there was an immediate response. There was no discussion here. There was an immediate response of saying, we will embrace the cost. And I want to say, the Lord wants us to have an immediate response to His call in our life. Whether that be a call to talk with somebody or write an encouraging note, to step out and pray for somebody for healing or for salvation, whatever it may be, to be loving to people around us, the kindness of God, bringing people to Jesus through our actions, through our attitudes, whatever it may be, as disciples of Christ, we are to have an immediate response. The thing is, too, in this text, is that they left what they were doing. They left their boats. They left their nets. They left their father. There's a cost in following, and there's a cost in the faith of following, that we have to relinquish the direction that we think we should be going, the direction that we want to do, even the pleasures of our day, to follow the voice of Jesus. Listen, it doesn't pan out any other way. There is a cost to following Jesus, and it takes faith to do so. It takes faith. Jesus called them. And you know what? This is an interesting aspect. In that day, typically, rabbis had disciples, but disciples chose to follow the rabbi. The rabbi, the respectable rabbis, didn't call disciples to follow them. But the radical rabbis did. Jesus was a radical rabbi. He called disciples to follow him rather than waiting for Peter and Andrew and James and John to decide to follow Jesus. Jesus still is radical. You follow a radical God. But you know what? You already belong to Him. He created you and He bought you back. You are double purchased. You were created and you were bought back. You belong to Him. Now, Jesus is still radical, and He calls us to do radical things. That's who He is, because Jesus is a contrast to the condition of the world. He's a contrast to the brokenness of the world. He's a contrast to the bondages of the world. And therefore, there is a radical nature on Jesus to destroy the works of the enemy. And therefore, there is a radical spirit of the living God that dwells in us to destroy the works of the enemy. We are to follow Him. Yes, there is a cost. And just like Peter and James and John and Andrew, they immediately responded. And the Lord is calling us to immediate response. You know, they left their father. They left what they were doing. Immediate response by faith. 2 Corinthians 5:7 says, "For we walk by faith and not by sight." That's the way we do it. Now, you know, there's a contrast later in the book of Matthew, in Matthew chapter 8:18, because Jesus is doing healings, he's doing wonderful things, and people are following and watching and wanting the ministry that Jesus is doing. And so there were people who were inspired to become Jesus's disciples. And in Matthew 8:18, it says, "When Jesus saw the crowd around him, he gave orders to cross to the other side. Then a teacher of the law came to him and said, 'Teacher, I will follow you wherever you go.'" Okay, here's a disciple that's coming to him and saying, "I want to follow you." And Jesus replied, "Foxes have dens and birds have nests, but the Son of Man has no place to lay his head." Another disciple said to him, "Lord, first let me go and bury my father." But Jesus told him, "Follow me and let the dead bury their own dead." Wow, that sounds super insensitive. What is Jesus saying here? There's a cost. First, he's saying there's a cost to follow. Are you willing to be uncomfortable? Are you willing to be outside of your comfort zone? To relinquish some of the things that you're used to follow me? The other one, the man that says, "Let me go bury my father," he's not talking about an immediate funeral he needs to attend or be a part of. He's talking about later. When my father dies, after my father dies, then I will follow you. He's talking about not being an immediate disciple, not being an immediate response to a call or to a desire to follow, but I'll do it later. Not today, later. It is the opposite of what Peter and James and John and Andrew did. It wasn't immediate. He's saying, I want the delay. I want to have delayed obedience to you. That's not following. Let me focus in on that. So many times believers, Christians, say, "Tomorrow, Jesus, I'll be used from you. When I retire, I'll be used from you. When I have more money, I'll give to you." Whatever it may be. And the Lord is saying, when I ask you, you are to have an immediate response to my voice. That is walking by faith, not by sight. That's what it means to be my follower, is an immediate response, relinquishing, leaving the nets, leaving the boat, leaving the Father, whatever I've asked you to do to follow me. This is what it means. This is the cost. This is what it means to have faith to follow, is the immediacy. And Jesus uses this example of the man who says, "Oh, I want to go do some good things. I'm going to go bury my father." Listen, in that culture, burying your father, taking care of that was super significant. It was a high priority. It was a respectable thing to do. And yet it was an excuse not to follow Jesus. How many excuses do we have not to obey what Jesus is asking us to do today? Even the simple things, even the things, but it requires us to crucify ourselves. It requires us to get out of our comfort zone. It requires us not to have pride and yet respond in humility, putting ourselves out there for the sake of what Jesus has asked us to do. This is what it means to increase our faith, to step out of the boat, to say, you know what? I embrace the cost of following him. What is the Lord asking you to do? Because how you increase your faith has to do with stepping out. It's not just internal, "Oh, increase my faith, but I'll fail to actually step out." No, you leave your nets. You leave your boat. You leave your father. You step into the unknown by faith. By faith. And that's what increases your faith. The Lord is calling us. We have a radical God, and he is calling us for greater faith. God bless you. Pray about this word.